So Casey, what was it like growing up in such a remote location?
Being a kid, you don't really know any different. Having to hike in and out of your house 8 hours from the nearest road. When you grow up like that, everything you do is very character building. It made me realize that I wanted an extraordinary life.
My first impression when I met her was she was barefoot. She was that girl that came out and just rode aggressive.
She's just an amazing, tough girl.
We're off with Casey Brown, one of the most all-round riders. She's had some great results here in the past.
She is badass. It doesn't matter what gender you are. You want to ride like Casey.
What I want to see myself do is just push the edges of the sport. I want to be in control of where I'll take myself.
The Crankworx World Slopestyle Tour is on.
Site for the third and final stop here in Whistler, BC.
We're in for a treat, guys.
Crankworx is a perfect platform for showcasing what I do.
Casey Brown's one of my favorite riders.
She likes to send it. She goes pretty big.
She is inspiring young girls. She's the coolest rider. She can do everything.
I'd like to compete in the enduro, and then there's the whip-off, which is one of my favorite events. I've been the whip-off world champ for the last 4 years. I'm super stoked to get out there again.
All right, come on up, Casey. What I find interesting is how you grew up in New Zealand.
Lou Brown's a fisherman. He and his wife took living off the beaten track to the extreme. They live in a place called Barn Bay. Now, you probably haven't heard of it. It's home to just the Brown family.
Growing up in a remote location was amazing. It taught me so much about trusting your instincts. I just loved the adventure side of it.
It looks nice tonight. It's a beautiful night tonight. We lived on the west coast of New Zealand in a very remote spot. There wasn't any plan or anything like that. I just happened to have kids in the bush.
For the youngest Brown children, the only life they know is one of a lost era, and family is the most important thing in the world.
Growing up in a place like Barn Bay, you have this freedom. They were encouraged to be adventurous. That really influenced her the rest of her life.
We're just in the forest.
Going through these challenges, and you figure out what to do with it. That was one of the biggest lessons I learned growing up.
Your imagination is completely free.
I made sure they had a bicycle all the time, even if it was too big for them. And it works. It's just a good bonding thing. Somehow we lived through that part, and we moved over here in British Columbia.
Well, we're getting fired up out here on Crankworx live from Whistler. So we're talking to some of the riders earlier, and a lot of the riders are saying the conditions are very tough.
Every year this track gets drier and rougher and rougher.
How's that feeling?
Good. I was practicing for the enduro, and there was this rock that I didn't see. Landed on my shoulder really hard. It was like so much pain.
If I'm gonna do it, I want to do well at it, so I don't want to just go and do top 10.
Yeah, you're going to go and you're going to win.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Being injured at Crankworx is hard because you want to be able to participate in everything.
It would be the first whip-off that I wouldn't compete in like 4 years.
With this sport comes the injuries. It just comes with the territory.
She had a couple injuries that definitely could have been career-ending.
Casey told you that was, oh no, no! Her race will be done after that.
I broke my pelvis, broke a few ribs, knocked myself out. That was the plate that they put in. My liver split open. That was the closest I've come to dying for sure.
Going through something like that and then getting back to the highest level of competing is amazing. That's definitely her personality.
When you raise kids in the bush, without too much contact with other kids, they write their own rules. You can't believe sometimes the situations that you get in.
Coming from living in a very secluded place to going to a regular school, and it wasn't easy. I wasn't super well socialized.
Fitting in with the other kids was really difficult, and having to wear shoes, which if you know Casey, she still doesn't wear shoes a lot of the time. Just these everyday things was really an adjustment.
My brother, he was always my hero. He was a professional mountain biker, and I wanted to be just like him.
Casey's quite a bit younger than Sam. Casey looked up to him, and so it's monkey see, monkey do kind of stuff.
She idolized him. The way he chose to live his life is something she really respected. He was one of those people you just wanted to be around.
The most inspirational thing about my brother was just the way he rode his bike and the way he built trails. I learned how to express myself through the way I ride my bike, and I think he taught me that.
Casey was the least trouble, but some of the other daughters and the son, when you come from New Zealand, you fall into any trap that's going.
Because I was the youngest, I was more malleable, whereas the older kids, there was bigger challenges, I think, for them.
They got sucked into some pretty big stuff, which should concern any parent.
Sam Brown loved adventure and never let a challenge pass him by.
I can't believe it. I mean, I just knew him as just a kid playing in the mountains. That's what I knew of him. Just ready to take on anything.
But Brown took on more than he could handle. The Nelson resident was arrested in the U.S. for piloting a helicopter loaded with 150 kilograms of BC bud. Brown later hung himself with a bedsheet in his Washington jail cell. A heavy price for a boy in over his head.
All three girls were devastated. It was real difficult for everybody, really.
It made me realize life can be just snatched away from you at any moment. Being on the bike definitely helped dealing with the grief. It was kind of a way to just remember him and I don't know.
We all had our own way of dealing with it. She committed herself to competing extreme.
His passing really made her latch on to mountain biking. That was her way of connecting with him. And then it became something she really excelled at. She is what everybody wants to be on a bike. She's having so much fun. She's playing, she's popping off things. You can just see the creativity. And that is because of Sam in a lot of ways. That way of living is definitely something that stuck with those kids.
She's in for the adventure, just live in the moment and taking risks. She wants to inspire people to want to ride a bike and maybe continue on with what her brother had set out to do.
If you don't throw yourself into something that you're passionate about, you may be wasting your time here. So I'm gonna go full on into this. Living on a bit of his legacy is really cool.
The morning of the whip-off, it's like Christmas. Such an amazing event.
Good luck. I'm sure you're gonna win it.
I don't know. It's like intimidating coming back from an injury and knowing that you have to be confident that you can do it.
What we are looking for as judges is obviously how far you get it out there. Amplitude is number 2, and then number 3 is getting it back. Lastly, and most importantly, safety. It can obviously get super dangerous when one of you slaps, and then there's serious problems.
The whip is a trick where you carve off the side of the jump and you make your bike go sideways. Your back wheel is going in front of your front wheel, and then you bring it back to land straight. It's one of the coolest things to watch and one of the hardest things to do.
That whip-off seems to be uniquely difficult. It's a big jump, maybe 40, 50 feet. You really have to trust yourself. You either do or don't.
Whistler feels like home to her, and she's never not won the whip-offs. She looks so good on a bike, and that event is perfect for her. An injury can be really tough mentally, but being able to bounce back from life's challenges was instilled in her from a really young age.
It's almost like you got to be doing something that's fairly hard on your system just to realize that you're alive.
Let's go. Casey Brown!
This is what we've been waiting for, folks. The mystery is about to be solved.
Fuck, that hurt. I felt it pop.
Your whip-off world champion. Put your hands together for none other than Casey Brown!
And made it through to the top spot again. Stoked on that. The reason why I do well at the whip-off is people can feel the passion I put into it.
Her love of the sport, it really comes through. Everybody wants to feel like that, and everybody wants to look like that on a bike.
It's fear that stops most people from doing different things or taking things a bit further than normal. Kind of like what Casey says, if you're not scared of something and you come across something unexpectedly, you can usually deal with it if you're not scared.
Risk-taking is super important in life. I'm out there throwing myself off jumps. It's a blast. Anything that you do, mountain biking or whatever it is, I think if you just throw your heart into it, that's the most important part for sure.
Well, we're getting fired up out here on Crankworks, live from Whistler. So we're talking to some of the riders earlier, and a lot of the riders are saying the conditions are